Well, hello.
Hi, what are you
What
doing?
is going on here?
Doing some soap making. Well, it's like this. I have a soap making book that I'm not terribly impressed with. It's written by someone who seems to be afraid to heat the materials. It's a cold process, which is the popular sort of thing. You basically have to weigh out everything perfectly, and then people, instead of liking to heat the materials, they like to blend them and let them sit for weeks to cure. And then sometimes they don't work. And then the book I have says things like, well, sometimes it doesn't work. Just throw it out and start over again. My goal is to be able to rescue any failed project. And so I took a whole bunch of scrap today, just from several projects, stuff that was either trimmings and just was not the shape I want, or it didn't turn out quite right. It was crumbly, or it was old and it had gotten soft and sticky. All of that stuff I threw into my pot. This is something else. I'll get to this in a minute. But anyway, I threw it in my pot, melted it down, added water. Well, okay. I took a basic recipe I worked out, which is 3 cups of standard vegetable shortening. Not 3 cups, 3 pounds, 1 tub, three, sorry, 4 cups of water, and a half a cup of lye crystals. That's it. Now, there are tables and chemical formulas, and you can weigh it all out. But anyway, that's basically what it is. So, and it depends on the type of fat in the shortening and all that stuff. So that's my basic recipe. So I was going to do that batch, but I was going to add all this other soap to it first. So what I did is I added the 4 cups to my scraps, melted it all down, then I added the lye, stirred it all up, let it react. The stuff wasn't all finished and stuff. And in another pot, I melted my fat, and then I poured the one into the other, stirred it and everything. Then after um, it started to boil, the soap rises to the top. So I skimmed that off and poured it in molds, and I just kept skimming it off and kept cooking it. And so each mold has a little bit different, potentially, process. So when I got done, um, some of the molds had free fat in them, so there wasn't enough lye. Some of the lye was consumed in my processing of the old soap, so I have excess fat. So I've never done a batch where I had excess fat. It's always been excess lye. If you have excess lye and water, the soap will come to the top and you can skim it off. The disadvantage of that is the glycerin dissolves in the water, and so you lose the glycerin, and that's what makes it your hands soft and everything. So you don't want to have a bunch of that if you want to keep the glycerin. So now I have, this is all the scrap. Okay, so over here, this is the soap so far that's come out. You can see a little bit of white right there. That's the shortening. Actually, I think it's glycerin mixed with shortening because it seems to be very water soluble. It's not the same stuff as it was before, but it's definitely a fat. So you can see that I've got two different colors. I made a whole bunch of different scraps, right, all mixed together. Well, this stuff rose to the top, and this was on the bottom. This is a more dense soap. It's made out of different fats. So I've got both of them on these bars. So some of them it actually separated in between. There was a layer of fat. So I trimmed off some stuff. These are kind of crooked because they were still soft and they had this fat in the middle. So I threw all the scraps in this pot over here, and which include excess fat. So this is soap that is not cured, and I've now melted it back down, and it's got excess fat in it and a bunch of glycerin. So what I'm going to do now is guesstimate how much lye to add. For the lye to work right, I want to add some water to it. So any water I add will be excess to the process because it has basically enough right now, but I don't want to just throw the lye in. I maybe could, but I'm going to add a little bit of water. So I did half a cup of lye for the whole batch and made this much soap. This is less than that in volume, and a small fraction of this is actually fat. So I only need to balance the fat that's not in here, not the part that's soap. So half a cup obviously is too much, quarter cup is too much, an eighth of a cup is probably too much, which is 2 tablespoons. So a 16th of a cup, half an ounce, 1 tablespoon, probably plenty. I want to try to get it fairly close. Of course, if I'm under, I'll have this excess fat again, which is kind of annoying. It's a little bit messy and whatever. So if I add extra water, if it's just a little bit extra water, it may be absorbed in the soap, and then it'll sweat it off as it dries and shrinks. If it's too much, the soap will float to the top and then in my molds, and then when I peel them back after it gets hard, I have to dump that water out that's in the bottom, and then I lose that much glycerin. So what I'm going to do now, I got to turn this heat down. It's starting to boil. So this stuff um, is soap and some excess fat. So I turned it down to low, and there it is. It's all melted now, so I don't have any chunks. It's all liquid and it's all foaming and everything. So now I just need to add a little bit of lye to it, cook it for a few minutes, pour it in my molds, and see how close I got. If I got it perfectly balanced, then I won't have any excess. If I didn't get it, then I'll have excess of either fat or alkali. No big deal. You skim off the soap, separate it, whatever messy scraps are left, you throw it back in your vat for next batch. So that's the way I think it should be done. I don't think you should have to measure everything perfectly from pristine ingredients from the store. If for some reason it doesn't work right, you throw them away. I would like to be a little more self-sufficient than that. If I'm going to have to, well, I haven't done this yet, but eggs, we have chickens. Eggs the yolk is, I think, 40% fat. I can make soap out of that. Is that the nicest soap in the world? No, probably not. Maybe we should get a goat. And then I can use the milk, the fat from the milk. I can make butter. I've made soap out of butter just from the store. So I could make butter, and then I could make soap out of that. Or I could grow peanuts and squeeze the oil, or a multitude of things. But if I do anything like that, the chances are it's not going to be perfectly balanced and everything. And if I decide to use wood ashes for my lye instead of commercial wood ashes, then how strong is that going to be? How am I going to be able to measure that? Now, a caveat here. If I use ashes, it's going to be potassium hydroxide instead of sodium hydroxide, and it's going to produce a soft soap. It will not harden. It will absorb moisture as it sits. So even if it's a hard block to start with, it'll melt. It just sits out. The sodium base will get harder. The water drives away from it as it sits. And so you can use wood ashes if you have salt. You add salt to your solution as long as you have excess water. The sodium will replace the potassium in the soap. You'll have a hard soap, and then you just have a brine that you have to that forms underneath the soap that you have to dispense with. So there you have it. Today's soap making project.
And go.
Alright, so I have my lye here, some crystal lye drain opener. I've got my tablespoon. I'm going to use about a half a cup of water. Some people are terrified of this stuff. Just be careful. That's all. Look at this. Let me just... Oh no, my hand is melting. Oh no. It's not a big deal. I mean, yes, it's caustic. It is. It'll burn if you leave it on there long enough. It's slick and yucky, and it'll start to itch and kind of hurt a little bit. And if you leave a strong enough solution on there long enough, it'll cause major damage. If you're not quite so ridiculous, it won't. So let's just get over the fear a little bit, people. Okay, so I'm going to put 1 tablespoon in this 1 tablespoon measure. And I am going to dump it. That's close enough. You can weigh this stuff, but I'm guesstimating and I'm watching and I'm just learning how, what it looks like. Okay, so there's that. Now I'm doing another no-no. I'm pouring water into the lye instead of vice versa, because it might splash and it might hurt us all. Oh no. This is getting hot, by the way. Oops, I'm going to loosen it. Okay. Yes, it's an exothermic reaction. Yes, the stuff is caustic, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you can see, and there's a little bit of residue in there. I don't care. You can be precise. I am going to wash my hands. I don't like it slowly eating away at me. I mean, I really don't like to hurt myself. So I take a little bit of precautions. All right, I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit, and I'm going to stir this stuff in. Now, I am sure there are lots of people out there. If you look down there, you can see a dark... When you stir it, you've got kind of a dark color underneath. Sometimes it's hard to see it. That's actually kind of a liquid, and then that's a different color. And that, generally, as soap is working, that bottom layer is the alkaline mixture that's not fully soap, and then you've got a top layer, and it's usually a different color. It looks just like a lather, but if you skim it off and watch what's going on, that's more fully reacted. And it's an art. It takes a lot of, watch and see sort of stuff. Okay, I've put what I believe is more lye than is necessary to react with this soap, and I put a little bit of water. I didn't want to put a huge amount, so I'm going to cook this a little bit. And, I don't have all of the answers to this. I don't have it all figured out. Basically, you can do stuff by art. You can, through careful observation, you can do something that's intelligent, test it, see what the results are. adjust it the next time a little different. Test it again. See what the results are. If you're patient and you're willing to do that, you can get to the point where you can have a feel for it. You can, just by looking at it, know basically what's going on. You can say, oh, I need to do this or that to fix it. Now, if you don't want to do that, that's fine. There are plenty of people who can tell you how to make soap by weighing out your lye. And there's nothing wrong with cold processed soap. I just don't like the fact that you're out in the cold if it doesn't work. You can't fix what's there. They don't know how to do that because why did this not set up? Oh, I don't know. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm going to cook this for a little while until I feel like it's done, just by the look and feel of it, which is going to be closer than it was the first time I did it, but not as close as when I do it 10 times more. I'll have a better feel for it. I'm going to pour it into those molds and let it cool for a bit, and I'll poke at it a little bit, and when it's firm, I'll dump them out and look at them and cut them when they're still soft, because if you let it get too hard, then it's hard to slice your soap into the bars you want. And you notice I'm also doing something very non-standard. Look at the size of this bar of soap. Yeah, it's got irregularities. This is what I call a nice bar of soap. I'm tired of those little tiny things. This is cool. Anyway, that's my soap making tirade for today. So I hope you have a nice day.